People require access from anywhere to resources everywhere, but legacy security is ill-equipped for today's hybrid organization. Appgate SDP delivers zero-trust network access for hybrid workforces and workloads, empowering trusted users with secure, frictionless connections to only what they need. Make your attack surface invisible and reduce time to provision by 91% with Appgate SDP, a leader in the 2021 Forrester ZTNA New Wave. Learn more at securityweekly.com/Appgate. Every 11 seconds, there's a new ransomware attack. Oil pipelines, universities, corporations, all paying millions of dollars. Barracuda says, don't pay the ransom. Before a ransomware attack occurs, train your teams to recognize an attack and use anti-phishing technology. Protect your applications, and they can't get onto your network. Simple backup and restore solutions quickly recover your data without paying the ransom. Build your ransomware protection plan now by visiting securityweekly.com/Barracuda. That's securityweekly.com/Barracuda. Let's face it, cyber attackers have the advantage. Extra Hop is on a mission to help you take it back. Regain the upper hand with security that can't be undermined, outsmarted, or compromised. When you don't have to choose between protecting your business and moving it forward, that's security uncompromised. See how it works in the full product demo, free online at securityweekly.com/Extra Hop.
Welcome back to Business Security Weekly. I am your host, Matt Alderman, joined by Jason Albuquerque and Ben Carr. InfoSec World 2021 is proud to announce its keynote lineup for this year's event. Hear from Robert Herkovic, plus heads of security at the NFL, TikTok, U.S. Department of Homeland Security, Stanford University, and me, I'll be there tomorrow. Plus, Security Weekly listeners save 20% on digital pass registration. Visit securityweekly.com/ISW 2021 to register now. Also, don't miss any of your favorite Security Weekly content. Visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to any of our podcast feed and have all new episodes downloaded right to your phone. You can also join our mailing list, Discord server, and follow us on social media and our streaming platforms. All right, gentlemen, it's time for the articles. Ben set it up earlier during the break. He said, I don't know how to start. I'm going to start. First article, the first 100 days in a CISO's life. Here's the bad things to avoid. And this is like, no duh. Like, all right, trying to take on too much. Well, okay. But it's like having a negative mindset and blaming others. Like when you walk into the role, really, that's what you're going to do first? I'm not sure that's good strategy.
I don't know. Are we politicians? It was the previous administration's fault. That's what it felt like.
That's so true. Yeah. I don't know. This article was a little bit of the, I don't know, just what you would think it would be. There was I don't know, blaming others. Who does that, right? Who comes in and lays that at the feet of the previous people?
So, there was one section that I honed in on, which I'd like to see the statistics around it, but if it's true, it disappoints me because we've talked about this for years on this show, and it's reality versus expectations, that section. And it talks about most often CISOs find that on arrival, it differs from their expectations that they were giving when they were promised the job. And we talk about this so much on this show. We've been talking about it for years, is that one of the most important factors is making sure that, the organization you're going to aligns with your morals, your missions, what you want to achieve as a CISO, and doing the diligence to actually interview the company back to make sure there's alignment, knowing what type of CISO you are. We've talked about that, ad nauseum here.
Yeah, we talked about that, I think, several weeks ago, right? Like I've been doing this talk on, basically like what the journey of the CISO likes and where it's going. But I think part of that discussion I have is kind of the 6 or 7 archetypes of what a CISO is. And I think CISOs get into this without really interviewing the company and having the discussion of like, what do you want? And the first red flag is they don't know what they want. That's a recipe for disaster.
Right. But at the end of the day, if they don't know what they want, that actually gives you some seeds for conversation to maybe pull out and get some of the expectations out of the company, right? I mean, I walked in the door as the first CISO ever of an organization, and they didn't know what they wanted, but they knew they didn't know what they wanted. And they knew they wanted someone there to guide them and give them the strategy. And part of my conversation with that organization was, then I need to be an influencer, and I need to report to the CEO if that's the case. And that's what happened, right? And ultimately, it gave me the ammunition to say, I need a seat at the table to make strategic decisions for this organization if that's the case.
And I think you have to be mature in your mindset enough to be able to have that conversation, because I think a lot of people go into that and they hear that, but then they don't know where to take that. Right. And, look, we talk about it like when you're buying anything, like be able to walk away from the table, right, of the negotiation, and that, that's where your power lies. And I think in this case, if it's not the right fit, be willing to walk away. And sometimes they'll come back to you and say, look, we really want you and we're willing to, let you report to the CEO, or we're willing to, give you the resources or the budget you're needing. But I think if you just jump into it thinking that's going to change, that's not reality.
That's right.
Yeah. And that's why it kind of ties into article number 2, which is the CISO advice, right? This is from a female CISO. And it was interesting because they talk about some of the traits, right? You just bringing them up, Jason, right? Collaboration, communication, engagement, have a conversation. Not that you're going to come in and control the security team, but you're going to work with the business and kind of figure this out. If you're not doing that as part of the interview process, then you're right. Reality and expectations are going to be completely off.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I love this article because it shows what true executive mentorship can bring to the table, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, ultimately, Ellen was mentored from the co-founder, right?
Yeah.
And mentored up through her role. And, we've talked about executive mentorship and having a succession plan. This is a testament and proof that it works. Having that great executive mentor, having someone teach you the ropes. For someone so young to come out and say, listen, the CISO's role is not to control security of a company, but enable their organization to be more secure, that's mature. And you can show it shows that mentorship was there.
Right. I mean, there was this mentorship was 22 months from the time she joined the company. She met with Henrik the first time. She's like, that's the role I want to. And there was a mentorship program for 22 months before he stepped down. I mean, that's almost 2 years, right? And you think about the longevity and the average time of CISOs and organizations. I mean, highly successful mentorship program here.
Yeah. Well, and I think she had that frank conversation, right? Like, I want to be the CISO. Now, she didn't know that he was the CISO, but that conversation, that dialogue, I guess, cemented kind of the journey, right? Like, she was able to actually have that conversation, and he said, "Well, I'm the CISO, but like, okay, now I know where you're headed. We can kind of start aligning that, and if you prove your mettle here, like, you could be the CISO." So I think that's a really good success story.
100%. And I'd be interested to see what that does for retention. Because now let's see what her tenure at this company is going to be. Because I'll tell you, that's a relationship builder right there, knowing that a co-founder of the organization put that much elbow grease into my career, right? I mean, that's huge. I'd love to see this story.
Well, it can be a magnet, right? It can be a magnet for other people who see that as foundationally, this is the path I can have, right? And it's okay to have that conversation with the supervisor and say, I want your job, not in a bad way, but like I have goals and aspirations and I want to get somewhere, right? And build your people so they can get the skills where they can assume that mantle and, you can move on to something else. That's ultimately.
We talked about it last week. My job is to have you put me out of a job. And that's what happened here, right? Ultimately, he mentored her to the point where he could step away from being CISO and have that responsibility, right? And that's the job of a mentor and a leader, is to build someone up to be able to step in your shoes.
I will say contextually, like, the one thing that may be a little edgy to say, but I didn't like the way they contextualized the article and the title of it, advice from a young female CISO. Like, if it was a guy, you wouldn't have said a young male CISO. Like, she has credit and merit in doing what she does and becoming a successful CISO. I think calling that out is, I don't know. I would like to get past that, where we can just recognize talents based upon the talent the person has, and not basically like, surprise, she was a female. Like, I have no surprises over that. There are a lot of really successful and talented, professional women in the information security side. I think having to put that moniker on the front, I don't know, almost downplays it, like makes it, it's more of a surprise that they can do it. And I don't think that's the case at all. So, hey, I don't know, contrarian viewpoint to some of that, but that's my thoughts.
We just interviewed one on the previous segment.
That's right.
That's right.
Right.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, we know there's a diversity problem, right? Obviously, we know that exists. We know that we need to start I think getting involved in communities who aren't normally leaning toward the cybersecurity field to get them involved. And I think this article I think is going to it plays into the diversity conversation, and I'm sure that's what they wanted to get at. But you're right. It depending on how you write and title an article, really forces people to lean toward one side or the other of thinking this is not an article just based on she's a woman. I don't like that either. But I think they were trying to achieve something, and maybe they just didn't do a good job in doing it.
Yeah, I understand the context, Jason. I feel like we're doing it the wrong way, right? Like there's a more positive way to do this, and I think that there need to be a lot more diverse people in cybersecurity, right? But it goes beyond, I think, and we're going to get into, there's another article specifically talking about this. We can go into more depth, but it's just beyond the visual, easy to tell things, right?
That's right.
And so I think I'd like to highlight like the difference she brought to the organization and the positivity, and she's successful, without necessarily needing to call out directly because she's a female, right? Like I think that just puts her in a bucket.
Yeah, right. No, agreed. 100%.
And we'll get there. Last two articles. But if the CISO doesn't control security, can they control resilience? Because this next article says we have to move beyond cybersecurity. We got to think about cyber resilience. And I'm like, all right, there's that term again. Like, what does that mean?
I took an issue with this article, Matt, because you want to know what? I look at it this way. I think CISOs are set up for success, and we've talked about this before, to help manage strategies around business resilience. Take cyber resilience out of the story, right? Business resilience as its entirety, including risk, right? Including business resilience. We have the technology side. We're involved in availability. We're involved in mobility. We're involved in the true nature of cybersecurity. Let's look at the organizational piece. We're involved in crisis preparedness, incident response, personal resilience from a staffing perspective. Operationally, we're involved, right? We're involved in redundancy and right, the resilience side there. Supplier concentration and resiliency around our suppliers. We're involved there because we're doing vendor risk. I mean, honestly, if we have good relationships with the CFO and the CEO, we're right in line with strategic and financial. And those are the last two pieces you need for business resilience. We're set up for it.
So I mean, isn't this just another indicator that the role is in flux? It's under change and movement, right? It's growing and evolving. And I think it's, the CISO title is a legacy of reporting to the CIO, and the thought that this is a technical issue, and it's really not. And as a business issue, is it a chief trust officer, a chief risk officer, a chief resilience officer? I don't care what you call it, but at the end of the day, it's a business issue, not a technical issue, and we need to think about it as such. And so I think you can call it resiliency if you want, but it's just what at the end of the day is the responsibility for the executive that has that role.
Right. And it's not just about cyber resilience, because I think to Jason's point, it's about business resilience. Cyber is a component, but it's not the only piece. And that's why I'm not enamored with the concept of cyber resilience as a standalone kind of component. It's part of a bigger business resilience discussion.
We're bigger, we're better, we're more strategic
role, right? Like
than that.
We talk about information security now as cyber because that's like the next thing, but cyber's only piece of what we do, right? I think which is what you're getting at, Matt, Jason. Like there's a greater scope. And so again, I go back to, you can call it cyber, you can call it CISO, like it's still only piece. And we need to elevate that discussion up to really take a look at how we actually do what we do as a job and what the responsibilities are.
That's right.
Talking about reinvigorating the workforce, hybrid work disconnect, FOMO is real. Interesting survey. I mean, we talked about aspects of this on the previous segment of the disconnect in the remote world. How do you get people back and build relationships and connections? This set of results just kind of reinforce some of that previous discussion. But I thought it was really interesting. 66% of hybrid workers surveyed said that they feel like they're missing out on collaborative opportunities when they're not working in the office. That's a really, really big number.
Yeah. And honestly, I feel that number might be the end result of one of the other statistics that were in there. And basically it says, 54% of workers that surveyed feel like they were overwhelmed by the number of work-related notifications they're getting. 63 respondents say they're overwhelmed. The managers say they're overwhelmed. And I think we're so deep into the whirlwind, in the daily grind, we're not picking our heads up out of the sand. We have ostrich syndrome right now, and we're running 1,000 miles an hour. And I had talked about it in the previous segment where, we as an organization are basically saying, listen, we got to block time out for our employees to be strategic, because they're so caught in the run that keep the lights on, the whirlwind, that we need to break their head out of the weeds and really get them to the point where it's okay to focus on something other than the run in the day-to-day. So we're forcing that and trying to force that conversation.
When 69% of people don't have a strong sense of connection, I mean, it's an indicator that a lot of organizations don't have corporate culture. They just don't, or it's dysfunctional, right? And so, like, how do you get people to feel like they're part of something bigger? And so they actually want to contribute, and they feel like what they're doing on a daily basis makes sense and makes a difference.
Yep. That's right. That's right.
Jason, on the previous segment, I think you said you block out a week, one day every week for no meetings. Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, we're basically saying, as a manager and as a leader, we're not going to stuff you full of management meetings. We're going to allow you to have a day a week where you can, get the action items done that you need to get done, be more strategic, right? And actually get, we found, talking to our employees and even some of our leaders, that were, they're talking to us about their pipeline and initiatives that they want to achieve. And then week over week, month over month, those action items and projects and initiatives are still there and they're not being actioned. And we start asking why. And it's all got to do with bandwidth. So if bandwidth is the issue, why you're having a hard time taking your strategic projects that align to our corporate strategic goals, right? If you're having a hard time executing on them, we're going to give you the opportunity to focus on that. Because that's where, it's I wish I could do this because I know I add value to the organization if I could do this. But I'm so stuck in the keep the lights on, the whirlwind, the run, the daily grind that I can't. Well, let's get that daily grind out of the way. That's our job as leaders.
And I think leadership-wise, like, you have to think about workforce planning and how you're actually allocating people's time with regard to projects, right? So I've seen in the past 10 to 15% allocation towards kind of personal development and just the daily grind stuff, expense reports, like figuring out like what you can't be devoted 100% to full utilization and then expect people to get that stuff done. It just doesn't work.
And that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the 80. We're talking 80-20 rule, right? Where it's 80% utilization, 20% on personal growth, certifications, and really that innovation, dedicated time.
And I think optimally, like, be able to look at that, somebody who brings you an idea for something or saying, hey, look, I think I could get to strategically move forward, but I need 3 weeks, right? Or I need, 6 months to get it done. You've got to be able to kind of look at how you play for the moonshots every now and then and let people do that. Otherwise, you'll never have innovation.
Yep. And then you're going to see people cycle out, right? Ultimately.
Yeah, that's true. Right. That's true.
Right,
burnout.
Because that's the other thing that's going to happen. This is where the burnout happens, and now you've got not only a development issue, you have a retention issue with your staff, right? So. All right, last 2 articles, right? They're very related about cybersecurity workforce, the need to diversify. What I thought was interesting is both IBM and Microsoft are putting money behind some of these efforts, right? Where they are funding education at different levels to really start to build up the skills needed to put cybersecurity resources in the organization. IBM going a little further on some of its diversification of where they're going to spend some of that money. But again, we've talked about this a lot, Jason, right? It starts with education. And if we've got big backers like IBM and Microsoft starting to put money behind these curriculums, it will create some momentum for us to start.
If they spend their money the right way, Matt. It's all about spending the money the right way at the end of the day. And for me, again, this is my passion, is how are we infusing it in K through 12? Because that's the future of our pipeline. And I'm a firm believer in looking at, middle school students and seeing if they have the aptitude, and then teaching them, educating them on what cybersecurity actually means. I speak to a lot of inner city schools. I speak to a lot of charter schools. And in many instances, those students don't even know what cybersecurity means. They don't even know what that, being
there's no
in this
recognition
industry
of a career
means.
path.
They're never exposed to it. So getting them the exposure they need as young as we possibly can is incredibly important. So I hope that Microsoft and IBM are dedicating tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars toward K through 12 education and infusing it
I think
in K
the
through
article
12.
they alluded to like the introduction of the funding in college programs, right? But I think, to your point, that's way too late. I mean, I think it's got to be done early.
Way too late. The kids have already formulated where they want to be when they grow up. My 10-year-old son, I took my 10-year-old son and his friends to the MLS game here in New England yesterday. And do you want to know what was some of that conversation on the ride up? We hit a little bit of traffic and they were talking. They're 10. What do you want to be when you grow up? That's what was happening in my back seat.
Yeah. At
So
10.
that's the age we want to start having the right conversations. 10. They're 10 talking about that.
Fourth graders, right?
Fifth graders. They're fifth.
Fifth graders. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. They're still in elementary school. They're not even in the middle school or the high school yet. This is elementary school discussion.
That's it. 100%. 100%.
Yeah, I think, to the point of the diversity, like you have to see where your career path could go, right? You have to see the potential. And if you don't see the potential there, you're going to gravitate towards something else, right? And so I think, removing those obstacles where people can see that there's a valid career path and, there's good money, there's good professional satisfaction. It's an interesting field to participate in. I mean, I think all those things are really key to getting kids interested in it at a young age.
Yeah. So like I said, it's spending the money that they're dedicating the right way, because if they're throwing it at the university level and that's where the majority is going, they're missing out. 100% missing out on the opportunity.
Yeah. And that's where we need to continue to help educate. Gentlemen, always a pleasure. Thank you, everyone, for watching and listening. We'll see you next week on Business Security Weekly.